And we are back with a new episode of More About Storytelling. I am your host, Kenton J. Moore. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about R.A. Salvatore and the Drizzt books that I love so much and why I love them. We're also going to be doing an interview with my newest literary best friend, Evan Parrott. So stick around and let's talk some more about storytelling.
Once upon a time,
in a galaxy far, far away, it was a dark and stormy night.
gather round, my friends. Let me tell you a story.
Dungeons and Dragons. For better or for worse, you've probably heard that title before. You might know what it is. You might have played the game when it came out in the 70s. You might play it now. You might be a fan of the Legends of Vox Machina. You might be a fan of Critical Role. Who knows? But chances are you know what Dungeons and Dragons is, for, like I said, better or worse. The author R.A. Salvatore writes absolutely awesome action, like one of the best people that I've ever read to describe a fight scene. And I love him. I love his flow. I love his theatricality. I love the way that he approaches world building, action, and tense, the tension of conflict. One of his series, the Drizzt series, is set in the Forgotten Realms, which is part of the Dungeons and Dragons mythos, part of the multiverse, the worlds, if you will. And it follows the adventures of the main character Drizzt, he's a drow, which is like a dark elf, and he comes from a city called Menzo Baranzan in the Underdark of the Forgotten Realms. And his journey brings him up to the surface, which is not a place where his people ever go. They're considered evil. They usually worship a very dangerous and evil goddess named Lolth. And, so when he comes to the surface, he doesn't exactly find himself welcome. He has to go on these wild adventures to prove himself as an adventurer. And the books really capture the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, and I absolutely love them. So if you get a chance, pick up the R.A. Salvatore books, Legend of Drizzt. I'd recommend starting with what's known as the oh man, what I'm gonna screw this up now. I should have had it sitting in front of me, but anyways, it's a Homeward Sojourn and Exile. They're generally considered like prequel novels almost, and they explain the Drow culture and Drizzt's escape from said culture to reaching the surface world, and so on and so forth. Now, I chose to do the review on those books specifically today because of my guest who's coming on very shortly here as today's episode 2 interview. I met Evan Parrott at CamCon and in Kamloops. We happened to be the only two authors who had tables there the year before last. And we were put side by side and we hit it off. We became very good friends. Now, Evan writes what's called cultivation fantasy. And I'll let him explain that in the interview. He'll do a better job of it than I do because I didn't even know about the term until I met him. But why I bring up R.A. Salvatore is because I have given Evan that compliment multiple times now, and I'm on book 3 of his series. He writes his combat, his action sequences very similar to Salvatore. You can see what his characters are doing. You can feel the intensity of their motions and their fighting. So do yourself a favor, check Evan out, get his books, and let's welcome Evan Parrott to More About Storytelling.
Okay, so from my first original literary author friend to my newest super awesome author friend, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Evan Parrott. How are you doing today, my friend?
Hey Kenton, I'm awesome. I am pumped to be on your new podcast.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's super cool. That's always a fun way to start. Is it how excited is Evan to be on more about storytelling?
So not only am I excited, I am equally excited that you are using a pun in your story name because or in your podcast name. I just love puns, and so the fact that you're throwing that around makes me very happy.
Well, it's just too easy, I got that compliment from Finney and Burnett, who's going to be one of our future guests. Excuse me, Dr. Finney and Burnett, because I really love the fact that she has a PhD.
Yeah.
But that's what she said too. She said, "Oh, I just love the more stuff, the pun, and you better be keep using that more all the time." And I was like, "Oh, I intend to."
Yeah. I
All
love it.
right. So let's start, Evan. Let's start out by asking you the ultimate question. Like, why writing? What does storytelling mean to you in your life? Like, why did you take up writing what you write?
Oof. Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And so really just it was inevitable, really. Like I started writing when I was a kid. I wrote my first like I'm gonna book in air quotations when I was in grade 6, and it was entitled School Fugitive, where this kid gets in trouble at school and he has to hide all over town as he runs from the administration. and and so like just this inherent need to be inventing stories was just ingrained in me so early on, and like I was just sitting in my room and creating my own episodes with Dragon Ball Z characters. And then when I started to get a little bit older, I started writing in high school, and it was just so important to me to be able to actually share ideas and worlds and create this space that's safe for people to escape to. And I think that a lot of people, that's why they read fantasy. And for me, I read so much fantasy that I get so engrossed in the worlds. And for me, being able to tell those stories and have people hopefully talk about them and then remember them later and being able to escape into them over and over and over again, it's just there's nothing else that I can think of that I should be doing with my life except for that.
That's awesome. It's like a calling. So I just got to take you back to that name drop there for a sec, because I love that you mentioned Dragon Ball Z. So I got to ask, who's your favorite character?
Oh, Gohan, easy. Um, yeah, it was. I like when we got to the Cell Saga, and Gohan just comes out and hits Super Saiyan 2. Like that was just an incredible moment, and Gohan was always the lead in all of these episodes that I was inventing with these like character, like these little figurines that I had that didn't actually move or anything like that, and I would like force them to move, and so like all of them, like the arms were like almost falling off and stuff because I had moved them so much while they're like fighting and stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never got too far into this series, but I really liked the early stuff, and I think my favorite had to be a tie between Master Roshi and Trunks. I don't know
Oh
why,
yeah.
I loved them. They were just good characters.
That's great. Trunks is always the he's always seen as like this epitome of the honorable warrior, right? Which is funny that you have Master Roshi and Trunks, because Master Roshi is the exact opposite. So
Yeah, yes.
yeah.
It's like loving Shredder and Splinter the same, eh? And then
Yeah,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
exactly.
They're so awesome. um, Well, yeah. So you mentioned fantasy, and I love the fantasy stuff, especially because, again, like my last episode with my oldest literary friend Astra, she's a big time world building high fantasy author, like yourself. But you write a type of fantasy I'm not familiar with, or at least I wasn't until I met you. So can you explain just a little bit? Like, tell me a bit about where cultivation fantasy comes from. I'd never really heard of it before you.
So I write cultivation fantasy, which is a subgenre of what's known as progression fantasy. And so we'll start with progression fantasy and then we'll dive into cultivation a little bit. Progression fantasy basically is a fancy way of saying in your first book, your main characters are probably pretty weak. They can't do a whole lot, and they have to push through and rise in levels or ranks and stages in my book's case, in order to unlock new abilities and become more powerful. And so there's this sense of progression throughout the entire story. And more often than not, these progression fantasy stories are pretty long series. My series is only going to be 7 books, which is pretty actually short for this
Hmm.
subgenre. You have
Wow.
like there's some out there that are like 15, 20 books, like it's nuts. And between kind of like 8 to 12 is pretty normal. And that's it's important to have that amount of story available because you have this sense of starting at a really low level and then hitting the height of this progression by the end of the story. And your readers are on this journey to get to the end because everybody needs to know what's at the end of that road.
Hmm.
And and so it's a really cool genre that grips me quite heavily because if you have somebody at this extremely low level and it's like, okay, well, but there's these other characters that are out in the world that you've heard about while you're reading, you're like, yeah, but they're at a much higher level. Like what can they do? Right? And you need to keep reading to find out. And so that's kind of progression fantasy itself. And then progression fantasy splits off into kind of 2 branches. And one of them is lit RPG, which is very popular right now. Basically, it's video games in books.
Oh,
And
okay.
so there's a governing system that runs it, and the characters start out at level 1, and then they earn experience points to get to level 2, level 3, and so on and so forth. That is lit RPG, very popular right now. The one that I'm reading right now is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt
Nice.
Dinneman. Yeah, it's huge right now. And so yeah, that's lit RPG. The one that I write in is cultivation fantasy. And so cultivation fantasy is actually rooted in Eastern Asian practices of tying into the energy of the world, the chi of the world, and connecting with it in a very fundamental way where it improves your mental capacity and improves your bodily abilities. And you not only unlock abilities for yourself, but you're connecting to the world as well. And so there's the meridians of the body, there's a core, a dantian of energy inside of you that you can learn to unlock and to manifest this power and draw in more power from the world to make yourself stronger.
Hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, and that's cool too because like for the listeners and stuff, I've been reading Evan's work pretty much since I met you, I guess, hey.
Yeah,
And
you bought the first book the day we met. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I bought the first book in the color version too. Yeah, like I got the
Yeah.
special edition. Whoop whoop. Listen to your audiobook in like while I was driving down to the coast to listen to most of the audiobook on the first book, which was really cool. And yeah, like that's one thing I've noticed. And I mean, I know in our conversations offline, being friends and all that, I've mentioned this a lot before, but Evan has a way of writing that really evokes sort of like the R.A. Salvatore, Legends of Drizzt. The way he writes combat is so explosive and intricate, but not in an overwhelming way. So you can actually visualize, you can see the choreography in your mind, which is fantastic. And, like when I read about your magic system, like it's awesome that you mentioned it in the meridians and the energy. I can't help but have this evocation within myself of like, Avatar Aang in,
Oh,
the Last Airbender when he's learning from the guru. about the flow of chi energy and all of his the blocks of his chakras and stuff. How much of that like Taoism and stuff inspired your magic system? Was that most of it, or?
So the cultivation fantasy on the face of it is inspired by quite a bit of Taoism, and I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's incredible.
Awesome.
And one of the just side note, one of the exercises at the School of Wind's Embrace in the first book that my main character Galleon has to go through is inspired by an exercise that Korra in Avatar: Legend of Korra that she has to go through when she's learning airbending.
Nice.
And yeah, and so
The
I just
spinning
it's
discs.
exactly, yeah, and so it's just so it was so fun, and I had to put something akin to it in my books, but um yeah. So to answer your question, so the genre itself is quite influenced by what you're talking about, and most of the cultivation fantasy that I've read is also influenced by that. I um I was inspired by it, but I needed to do something different because I didn't there's a lot of cultivation fantasy authors out there, and I needed to be separate from them. And so I didn't use chi as my energy. I created something myself that was different, and it was all you could say it was inspired by it because it's a trope of the genre. But when I created Sleeper Sand, the energy of my own world, it was definitely something that was firmly out of my own head for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and it shows.
Yeah.
It's very unique in your works, and I mean, I would say pretty close to about 45% through book three. I say that with a lot of trepidation because I feel really bad that I'm not further into it, especially considering that book four is sitting in my inbox waiting for a beta read. But that's one of the things that I've always been fascinated with your world building, Evan, is I find with all of the authors that I've met since actually starting to invest my energy into this world, all of them are so highly intelligent. And, like science fiction and fantasy authors tend to be the most so. People that are just obsessed with research and knowledge and trying to be like this. But what if it was also a bit of this?
Yeah.
And like I said before, reading your books, I get all these different evocations that come up, all these different things that show up in my brain. And I think like, Sandman from Rise of the Guardians. And, I love that movie, by the way, and I will die on that hill. That movie was great.
I also love that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
they did Nightmare and Jack Frost like so well, but or Pitch, right? They called him Pitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, like I've always loved that, and I love how much you've put in there because like my dad kind of raised me on worldly stuff. He was a helicopter pilot, did all that travel, so I grew up on like the Celestine prophecy and Taoism, and seeing that show up in your work is just awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah, and it's so fun, and I think it's important to it's an important it brings up an important discussion, right, of our own world and a connection to the world itself, right, that isn't really considered in everyday conversation. And in these books, in cultivation fantasy, in my books, the world itself, provenance, becomes its own character, and because there's this inherent and just absolute connection between the cultivators and the world itself, and you can't have one without the other, right? And so
Right.
it's almost it's symbiotic in a lot of ways. And in the real world, it's when you were saying, like, it's this way, but what if it's also this way, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
that's a fact of our own world, right? Like, we rely upon our environment and our world, and that's really important, right? and just to throw magic at it is just taking it one step further, right? But those inherent connections are still there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this is nothing new to humanity. You know what I mean? Like you've got Taoism is quite possibly one of the oldest known philosophy slash religions in the world, right?
Yeah.
From which so many other things were gathered. Like the Holy Spirit and all these things. But it shows up so much in pop culture too, when you get things like the Force and all that kind of stuff. But it's awesome. It's always awesome when you see authors take it and do something unique with it. So mad props to you for that, my friend.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So yeah, so you you've recently started a new venture too, hey? Like outside of your writing, do you want to talk a little bit about Dreams to Life?
Oh, I do. Yeah. So Dreams to Life is a new program that I just launched last month. But it's something that has been in my head for a while, really since I started my own journey of actually like committing myself to becoming an author, and realizing that dream that I've had since I was a kid. Because like going the indie route, I didn't have anybody that I could call up and ask questions, even just the simple questions of like, what file size do I need for Kindle Direct Publishing? How do I hire an editor? How do I reach out to connect with a graphic artist to do my cover? Like all of these basic things that nobody tells you when you're a kid that you're going to need to be an author,
Yeah, tell me about it.
right? Yeah. And so there were all of these road bumps when I was moving to publish Winds Embrace, and it could have been so much smoother if I had somebody to reach out to and ask those questions. And so Dreams to Life is my opportunity to offer that service to all of the other aspiring or already professional authors out there, where they can reach out to me and we can talk about what it means to be an author, how to become an author, how to be published, what to do once you're published, all this kind of stuff that were the questions that I had that I didn't get the chance to ask. And people just
Man,
they can I do this service for a fixed hourly rate. It can be a single conversation for multiple hours. It can be an hour long conversation that we have every single week. And it can be anything from helping you with the editing. How do you flesh out your characters? How do you world build? Because lots of people, there was some things that I didn't think about until much later. Like, you know, you have these ideas of currency and government
hmm,
mythology and even just the curse words of the civilization. Well, guess what? In fantasy worlds they're different
right.
because
Yeah.
they're a different world, right? Like in the cloud breakers you have these light worshippers, right? And so when they say light coal, what are you doing, right? And so in Valen, and the same thing exists in my world, where when somebody says, oh, first dreamer's tattered dress, well, that sounds like nothing in the real world, but in provenance, it means something,
Yeah, it's like a
right? And
curse. Yeah.
so, yeah, and so those just having somebody to talk to about those things, and that's what Dreams to Life is that it's people can hire me kind of like a coach. I think is a good word to describe it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because yeah, and then I can talk to them, like I said, once, or it can be an ongoing thing, and it's a low hourly rate, just $20 an hour for people to talk to me and talk about writing.
And pick your brain. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good word to use. I was going to suggest, like it sounds almost like a writing coach on crack. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like in my own journey, I have dealt with, consultants. I've dealt with writing coaches. I've dealt with all of that, but never when I had a meeting with a writing coach would they offer experience. Which when
Yeah.
you first told me about what you were doing and filled me in on the project, I love the fact that that's what you're putting on the table. You're putting on the table your experience. Like You're basically teaching kids not to put their hand on a hot stove because you've done it before and you know what happens, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. It's just smoothing out the road for, and there can be people who are just as far as I am and maybe have even more experience than I am, where they're trying something new. And so they just
Mhm.
want to ask they're a thriller author who wants to ask a fantasy author a question,
Right.
or something like that, right? And but really it's for those people who are sitting there and they've got this incredible idea, and those ideas need to be cultivated, pun intended.
Pun intended.
And
Well done.
yes.
Well done.
And I really want to offer that stage to the people who deserve it.
Yeah. And it's funny, hey, because like I've gone in the last 2 years since I really decided to dive into all this writing with both feet. I mean, I've been a writer, a creative since I was Christ, since I could remember. And I kept wanting to do it, but I had this the voice in the back of my head all the time that, drawing pictures and telling stories is never going to put food on the table. And I say it that way because there was a very specific person in my life who was
Yeah.
known to make that quote and was constantly like, get your head out of the clouds. So I was never supported, and everything in my life has been autodidactic. There was what I did for my career, which was in the Navy and all that, getting a quote unquote real job. But then there was the things that I loved, and the things that I loved, I taught myself. So like you, I never had a coach. I never had anybody to teach me. Like when I learned how to write screenplays and how to format them, it was by study and practice and feedback from, friends and other people. So, like what you're doing is fantastic, but you're also going like a step beyond. So you're not just saying, "Hey, this is how build a good habit as a writer. This is, my feedback to your story." You're going right along the lines to, like you mentioned, like how to hire a graphic artist. And when I go to these things like Enderby LitCon or any of these local conventions for creative authors, there's been a lot of times where I've met traditionally published authors that are just now deciding that they want to dip their toes into the indie world because maybe their agent or their publisher isn't interested in their new story they want to tell. So they're like, but I want this story out. So they have no clue how to begin. It's very daunting.
Yeah, exactly. And the good news about it is that being an indie author has changed so much over the last few years, and
Yeah.
like really over the last decade especially. Like when I self-published the book that um would ultimately inspire this series back in 2010,
Oh wow.
self-publishing was almost like you had given up, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right. And so, but that was in 2010 when Dare to Dream came out, and honestly, like, it was written in high school. Nobody should ever go find it. But yeah,
Everyone go find it now.
everyone go
Everyone.
find it. Yeah, there's only
Yeah.
120 copies in existence, so good luck with that. But there's when that book came out in 2010, I self-published it because I needed to have a book published, and I wasn't prepared. I was too young, I was too anxious, I was too inexperienced to do things properly, and so I jumped on it and I pushed that book out in the world. And ultimately I'm glad I did, because it
Mhm.
served as the inspiration for this series. But now indie publishing is such a force in the
Yeah.
publishing world, and
Yeah, it's huge.
some of the most incredible books that I've read are indie books. Some of the other authors in my genre, like Tao Wong and Will White, Dakota Kraut, Dennis Vanderkirk, and all of these people who are writing cultivation fantasy or lit RPG, most of them, if not all of them, are indie authors.
It's insane.
And right, and they're and like Will White is a bestseller. He has a whole animation for that's coming out in the new year for his series. And like the and Tao Wong, I think, was just picked up by a different another press, and so he was Indian. His series, by the way, Tao Wong's series, 1,000 Li, is one of my major inspirations for cultivation fantasy. The series just finished. The 12th book came out earlier this year, and it's incredible.
That's awesome.
Um,
And
yeah,
it's funny. People so often forget too that so many really famous authors and really famous books started out as indie.
yeah,
Like you've got Christopher Paolini with the Aragon trilogy. He indie published before getting picked up,
yeah,
right? Lauren Roberts with the Powerless trilogy. That's another one. She, made it on as a book talker, and then now she's all over the world. So,
yeah. And
it's
Travis
huge.
Baldree too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Travis Baldree, Legends and Lattes, was he originally self-published, and then it was 3 weeks later he was picked up by Tor, and um, but he, yeah, originally indie published, right? So
yeah.
it's a force in the publishing world now for sure.
Yeah, and I just love that you're doing the dreams to life thing, because there's in my office there's a poster on my corkboard beside my desk, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 Rules of Success, and I'm going to do my best at an imitation here while I recite to you number 6, which is give something back.
Nice.
And I think that's what dreams to life is. Hey, it's giving back, right, to your passion, like I do with this
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly. Yeah, it's just another avenue where we can connect with a community, right? And we're not I was talking to another author recently, and she's a thriller author, a very talented one, Faye Arkand, and she was just
I
saying
love
that, like,
Faye.
yeah, yeah, and she was just talking, we were just chatting, and she said we're not each other's competition,
Right,
right? And like
right,
the success of Provenance, a cultivation story, does not depend on the success of Cloudbreakers.
right. Yes,
There's no correlation there. There's nothing that says that we both can't have our stories remembered for ages to come.
right.
And connecting with the community in by doing things like your podcast or My Dreams to Life is just one more way that we can help everybody's stories succeed.
Right. It's like it reminds me of that story of the Wine Valley in California. There was a movie made about it. Can't I right off? It's killing me that it's one of my favorite movies, and I can't. I'm gapping on the title, but the idea was that if one succeeds, we all succeed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So, Evan, we're getting close to time here, and as you might be aware, I play a little game on my podcast with my interviewees, where nearing the end of our time together, I'd like to ask one more question. Are
Ooh, yeah.
are you ready, my friend, for your one more question?
Oh, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
All right, so this is going to be about your books because I've like I said, I'm on book number 3. So this is going to be about your books. Here we go. Which of your characters, if they were really alive today, would be the most likely to forget their lines and why?
Oh my god. Okay. Um I think it's got to be Ava, right? Like there's there's no way that it's not Ava. And so there's multiple reasons why. We're going to go through some characters real quick, okay?
For
So
sure. Yeah.
number 1, Galleon has a near perfect memory because he grew up in a village that didn't have access to magic in the same way that the rest of the world does. And so where everybody else had all of this magical vellum to write on and stuff like that, Galleon never had that, and so he was always cultivating a powerful memory. So
Awesome.
Galleon would never forget his lines, not a chance.
Neither
Okay,
would
then
Chris.
I was just about to move to Chris. Galleon's best friend Chris is the ultimate in a lethal bookworm, and
My
there's
favorite
just
character, by the way.
thank you. I'm so glad to hear. Yeah, and so Chris would never ever forget anything to do that. If it was written and given to her, it's a treasure. So she would never forget. She would never do
Right.
it. Abe is too serious. It's a job. It would be a job for him,
I could
right?
see that. I could see that.
Yeah, he would. It would be his job, and he that would be unacceptable, right? And then and then Ellie would just be along for the ride, right? Because she's always just wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that she would risk it. And then Ava is such a shit disturber that if she, number one, she would either forget her lines, or number two, she would go out there and pretend to have forgotten her lines just to mess with everybody.
Just to mess with the whole production.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what would happen. So it has to be Ava.
It has to be Ava. I love it. You know what I love is that right on the spot, like for the listeners, I give no indication whatsoever what question is coming. I may or may not, or if they've listened to the podcast, they may have an idea about this segment, but I give them no indication of what's coming up. I think about it at great length ahead of time. And I love I love that not only did this one catch you off guard, but I love how quickly you backflipped, found your footing, and then just went right into it, man. Like,
Yeah,
with some great thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be she would either forget it, or she would pretend to forget just to mess with everybody.
I could see her doing that.
Especially if it was Abe who was running the show.
If he was directing.
If he was directing, Ava would go out of her way to mess with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. That's fantastic, man. Well, thank you. That was a fantastic answer. I couldn't ask for anything better. Evan, lastly, tell everybody, where can we find more about you? How can we find your work?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For the listeners, do look him up, do follow his work. He's got 3 books out already, 4th coming. He's very prolific, and I can give you my full recommendation for reading his work. So
well,
go
thank
ahead,
you very
Evan.
much. Yes, of course. So, Provenance: A Cultivation Story is my debut fantasy series. The first book, Wind's Embrace, came out in June of 2024. The second book, Somnium Waste, debuted in January of 25. And The Restless Mountains, book 3, came out in August of this year. So we do have the first 3 books in the 7-book series out. The 4th book will be coming out in the spring, likely in May or June, depending on how editing and stuff goes. But it is finished. It's just going through beta reading, as Kenton said. The best way to follow my journey as an author is through my Instagram account, which is just at Evan Parrott Author. You can find me on Facebook through the same thing as well. I'm mostly active on Facebook too, but I'm more active on Instagram. You can go to my website, which is just evanparrottauthor.com. There you can find a nice timeline of what it took for me to become an author, and also can find all the information about my Dreams to Life program there as well. That's a really great resource. And of course, my books are available in local Coles and Indigos throughout BC. Direct sales through me, and all are available on Amazon.
Perfect. And that's Parrot spelled like the bird, correct?
Parrot spelled like the bird, but with an extra T. There's 2 R's and 2 T's. Yes.
See, this is what editors are for, to tell us authors that we're spelling things wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, man. Evan, thanks for coming on the show, man. I always have a great time talking story with you since the day we met at CamCon. It's been a great friendship, and I really look forward. I hope you'll come on the show again. Hopefully I didn't scare you away.
Oh no, I would be ecstatic to come and talk about stories some more. Stories connect everybody, and I will, like you, in the words of Kenton J. Moore, die on that hill.
Awesome. Awesome. Right on. All right, and there we have it, folks. The end of episode 2. Thank you to Evan Parrott for joining us today. Thank you for listening. I hope you had a really good time, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Fade to black. The end.